Ladies and gentlemen, it's release day, baby, and as such, we got a brand new patch 1.0 to break down. With this patch, we are getting many hero changes, a new hero, a new map, a new mode, and many changes to gunplay and quality of life. So make sure you watch to the end and don't miss out on a single bit of this video so you know everything in the brand new patch 1.0. Now, if you like Valorant news, Valorant content, or want to improve at Valorant, smash that sub button, but enough wasting time, let's just jump right into it, shall we? So if you're watching this video on June 2nd, more than likely the game has already been released in your region, so we finally made it and the game is full released. Now, right off the bat, something quite expected is the new hero Reyna is going to be added to the game already, and it's definitely a surprise because we didn't know for sure if she was going to be here. I look forward immensely to running her down mid and either throwing or carrying, most likely throwing though. Now, the new map Ascent is also being dropped into the game, which is set in Italy. It's going to be a close range map with a large middle open skirmish area. It's a map specifically the devs have stated is, quote, a playground for ability use, which could be a good or bad thing depending on your perspective, but I'm interested to try it out. Something we do know from the developers roundtable though is there's going to be an actual closing or opening mechanic in the map, so that's something that's going to be interesting because it seems that every single map has like its own unique mechanic, and this is the mechanic for Ascent. Now, moving on to huge map changes, Split is also receiving some huge changes as shown here in the middle of the choke. Look at how the entire left side of mid is completely replaced by a slight elevation and a single box. Now, Split had some huge defenders map change nerfs a while back, but it still seemed overwhelmingly defensive sided because mid was so hard to control. But now, mid is going to be a lot easier to fight, and it's going to be a lot more difficult for something like a solo Sage to hold mid, which is going to be really strong because I thought that the choke point in mid was definitely really one-sided. I actually love this change, and it most likely makes Split my favorite map right now. I haven't played the new map yet, but right now, my favorite map is definitely going to be Split after these changes. Now, before we get on to the spicy hero changes, we have to quickly talk about the new mode at launch. The game mode will be called Spike Rush, and it's going to only last 12 minutes per match. Now, we don't know the full details, but I've seen glimpses here of gameplay, and it looks like everyone gets a spike and everyone's trying to plant. It's a very hyperactive mode. It's going to be a crazy mode full of killing. Everyone's either going to have random guns or everyone's going to be on the same page with a certain type of gun. I'm not quite sure for full clarification, but all you need to know right now is that it's going to be a crazy fast mode. It's going to end incredibly fast. It's going to be filled with a lot of killing, and it's going to be exceptionally fun on the new map Ascent, which is a short range map. There's going to be all kinds of combat. Now, my first impression of this is that I'm extremely down for anything that lets me practice my garbage tier mechanics in a very rapid way, so I'm going to be extremely excited, and I'm definitely going to be spamming the hell out of this game mode. Now, let's move on to the bread and butter hero changes, and oh boy, there are a lot of huge changes here. First off, let's start with the goddess herself, Sage. Now, Sage got some huge nerfs here. First, her healing orb cooldown changed from 35 to 45 seconds. Then, her bearer health got decreased from 1,000 to 800. Her bearer duration got decreased from 40 to 30 seconds. But as a small consolation prize, her friendly barrier orb is now visible on the minimap to your allies. Now, this is a crazy nerf for Sage. I mean, the fact that her heal gets 10 seconds per cast, less uptime, the fact that her barrier health is going to be far easier to destroy, the fact that the orb duration is going to be far less, doesn't stick around for that long. Frankly, this really hurts Sage, and I think that this might even change her on the tier list. I do think that she's still incredible, and she's going to be an incredible character, don't get me wrong. But I do think that this definitely greatly weakens her, and by how much, I'm not entirely sure yet, but this is a really big change for Sage. Do not take it lightly. Now, moving on to Raze, we have a small change for her. Her blast pack, the maximum damage radius went from 2 to 1 meters. Essentially, what this does is it just makes it less effective, and it's harder to do damage unless you hit someone very precisely instead of having a pretty big wiggle room. This makes it far worse as an offensive ability, and it's less forgiving for clearing out corners. You need to be way more precise with your bounces if you want to get it directly in the corner that you're trying to hit. It's still going to be great for self-mobility, which was debatably its strongest aspect, so I don't think that this really changes Raze in a sizable way. Now, let's move on to some Jett buffs. Her Cloud Burst in particular went from 4 to 7 seconds. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but also her Tailwind, when she dashes through a Cypher's trapwire, it will briefly reveal her, but then she'll break right through it. It won't whip her back like it did before. This seems like a pretty good change for Jett. I mean, the Cypher trapwire definitely came up, and it was definitely a big deal, and this helps with that. She doesn't have to worry about trying to dash to a place aggressively, only to get shut down by a trapwire. And the fact that Cloud Burst now lasts 7 seconds is a big deal. The only problem with this is I really don't think that this fundamentally fixes the problems of Jett as a character. And with the new character Reyna on her heels, is Jett really a fragger that you want to play in comparison to Raze, Reyna, Phoenix, Breach? It's really hard for me to suggest playing Jett even with with these changes. I would have liked to see some more powerful buffs, but I'm sure that there's going to be more things down the pipeline. Now let's talk about Phoenix, which got some insane changes overall. First off, his Blaze Wall went from 6 seconds to 8 seconds. His Blaze damage went from 15 damage every 0.25 seconds to 1 damage every 0.033 seconds. This actually cuts the damage in half, just for reference. Now the Blaze and Hot Hands healing both got changed. Blaze healing went from 3 every 0.25 seconds to 1 every 0.16 seconds, and Hot Hands went from 3 every 0.25 seconds to 1 every 0.08 seconds. Now actually this doesn't really change Hot Hands in particular, and it does look like a nerf to Blaze healing, but what it was actually doing is just adjusting it compared to the time that Blaze Wall lasts. So now, Hot Hands is actually going to heal you faster, it's going to heal you up quicker, but Blaze Wall is going to heal you up to the same amount of health. It's just going to take longer time because the Blaze Wall lasts longer. Basically, both of them will heal about 50 HP, is what the developers said in the patch notes. Now, moving on to another buff about Phoenix, his curveball, the flash duration was increased from 0.8 seconds to 1.1 seconds. That is an insane buff, and up against those who are against Phoenix, you're going to really have to master being able to 180 look away from the flash and 180 back to the Phoenix, because that 1.1 seconds means that you are going to die if you get hit by this flash. So this is a great change for Phoenix players, and against Phoenix, you need to be hyper aware of this change. Now, lastly for Phoenix, we have a run it back change, which might seem like a quality of life, but I assure you this is a really serious change. After his run it back, it will automatically reload all the weapons on respawn. Now, this makes it a lot harder to punish a Phoenix when he comes out of his ultimate. A lot of times people would push his ultimate, and it was really weird for the Phoenix player to have to reload his weapon right when he got out of his run it back. So this is a nice change for Phoenix overall, and I think it buffs his character. And overall, all these changes are things that I can agree with. I think they're really good for Phoenix, especially with Phoenix being quite a bit worse than Breach before. I think this brings him at least a little bit closer to Breach's power level. Now let's move on to another character that had huge changes, Omen. Now Omen's Paranoid, the thing that stuns people, is going to be far more reliable at close range with hit detection, and it's only going to warn enemies when it's fired, not when they're directly in its path, so it's going to be a lot harder for enemies to dodge it. They're not going to know when it's coming right for them, so you can hit them way more consistently, and it can be used way more aggressively, which is all good for Omen. Now, specifically for his dark cover, Omen will now enter a phaser world where he gets to see through walls and plant his smokes much easier. This is going to be a great quality of life change because you could put your dark cover on top of the high ground or underneath low grounds or anything like that. It's going to be a lot easier to fit it exactly where you want to, and you don't have to be watching the minimap like a hawk, which is only on a 2D plane, not a 3D plane. On top of that, what they did for dark cover is they changed the Omen controls. If you use your primary fire, it's going to increase the distance. You use your secondary fire, it's going to decrease the distance. And when you use your ability key the second time, it will launch the ability. Now, this might take some getting used to for people that have already played Omen previously, but for all the people who haven't, and in the long term, I think this is going to be a good quality of life change, and it's way more intuitive for the new players, so it's going to be good overall, in my opinion. If you don't agree with me, let me know down below. Now, next up, Shrouded Step, Omen's Teleport. It will show you exactly where you're going to teleport on the minimap, and it's going to also tell you if your vision is being obstructed from where you are to where you're teleporting to. This is going to be a nice quality of life change and make it more clear about teleportation when you're teleporting in your smokes or out of your smokes or things like that. It's going to be really nice, and along with the other dark cover changes, it's going to make Omen feel way more smooth to play. Now, lastly, this is probably one of the biggest changes for Omen, and it's about his ultimate from the shadows. Now, when you teleport to a place, you always go into this ethereal form, but a lot of times, if enemies found you, they would just wait for you to pop out of your ethereal form and just kill you. What you can do now with Omen is you can actually cancel that teleporter by pressing the ult key again. You're still going to lose your ultimate, but you're not going to commit to the teleport. Now, this is great for a number of reasons. The first big reason is the fact that you can simply not get farmed if you try to teleport somewhere, and there's 3 people just sitting there waiting for you. You're like, yeah, no, I'm out. I'm not going in there. And then you can just go back to your team. No harm, no foul. On top of that, you can actually use this ability to get information from the other side of the map. You can go, hey, I'm going to teleport here. If you try to teleport to B side and no one's there, then you can just stay on A side. You could potentially use this to make a play, give you information at the same time. I think it's a really versatile way to change this ability, and I really like this change overall. Now, as for the last minor hero change, Sova's arrows will no longer bounce unpredictably, and that's great for me as a Sova main. I hate it when I set up a rollout again and again with my recon arrows, and it just goes in like a completely absurd direction. Like, what the heck? I've tried this over and over again, and it should be consistent, but it's not. Now it will be consistent, so if you're a Sova main, be incredibly thankful for that. Now, before we move on to the other huge changes in the video, make sure that you click that subscribe so you can get an up-to-date 1.0 hero tier list with Reyna included coming very soon. Now we're going to go over the big highlighted changes. So first off, there's huge performance updates across the board. Every computer from high to low end should have huge FPS improvements, which is going to be fantastic for us because frankly, a lot of these FPS improvements have been atrocious when you have a high tier computer that's getting like less than 90 FPS in some fights. Specifically, Riot has taken a look at combat in general and how it's been tanking FPS, and they've done their best to try to fix those problems, so I hope the game's going to feel way more crisp in-game this release. Now, as far as some other highlights, I'm going to run through them bullet point mode. You're not going to get any ult points for dying to a non-enemy player, so any sort of team kill or suicide will not let you get ult points, so that's something to really keep in mind. There's not going to be a way to like farm ult points in an eco round or anything like that like there used to be. There will also be a ranked leaderboard system, but no confirmed solo or duo queue yet. They're still willing to change their beliefs on the solo duo, but for now they don't really want to include it in the game. If you really want to see it in the game, you need to be vocal to Riot, hit them up on Twitter, message them, DM them, do whatever you have to. If they think that enough people want it, they might implement it, but if not, then it won't be implemented at all. Now, next up, something that's actually not included in this patch notes, but I thought I would talk about it here, is soon after this launch, they're going to set it up to where if you're in a 4v5, there's going to be a vote to surrender, which is incredible. I mean, how many times have someone left your game and you just had to sit through this lost game for, I don't know how many rounds. It's something like 20 minutes, and it was just an awful experience because you know you were going to lose. Now there's a vote to surrender. Thank goodness. That's going to be extremely exciting. Moving on to other issues, they've claimed to fix a huge amount of the hit registration problems that we've seen, where headshots don't connect with people, or headshots don't kill people, or headshots register as body shots. Things like that are all going to be fixed, which is incredibly great news. On top of that, some of the Viper boost spots, I don't know if you saw them, where Viper could specifically send jets flying across the map, all of those got patched out, in addition to a lot of broken cypher cams. Those are fixed as well, which is a constant process. As more broken cameras get figured out, Riot is just constantly patching them out. Now, the last thing we need to talk about is the monthly battle pass, which is similar to like a Fortnite battle pass, where you get rewards by playing the game, and it's going to cost 10 USD per month, and it's going to come with a quote-unquote cute gun buddy. Now, I've actually taken a glimpse at the battle pass, and you're going to be able to see it too if you load up the game. There's actually a lot in the battle pass. It looks like a great value, and I'm definitely going to be buying it because why not? It seems far cheaper than just buying individual skins, and the gun skins look quite awesome, and it's going to encourage me to grind the game, which is always a plus. Now, I know I've talked a million miles per hour in this video, but I've kind of had to smush everything I needed to talk about, and there's still so much more to talk about that I didn't even touch in this video. So if you want to see the full patch notes, definitely check it out in the links down below. But if you don't want to miss out on a single bit of news, or if you want to improve at Valorant, do me a huge solid, smash that sub button. And that's about it for today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time.